This 13-inch M4 MacBook Air is my main productivity device. I'm going to place it here carefully. It came out in March this year and I got it in July. I bought it with my own money, by the way, so you're getting my unbiased thoughts and my honest opinions. So by now I've had the MacBook for almost 3 months and I've used it almost every single day. Too many hours on most of these days, and I still like it a lot. It's a classic clamshell laptop, which in my opinion is still the best form factor for getting work done anywhere and everywhere, because you get the screen, you get the touchpad and the keyboard. The 13-inch screen is big enough for me, and at the same time the device is small enough for me because I like small devices. Weighs like 1.2 something kilograms and it easily fits into my backpack. I don't mind carrying it around too much, so form factor is pretty great. It has great battery life. It has USB-C charging. I don't know if this is focusing. Anyways, I want this on every device that I have. What else does it have? Oh yeah, it's completely silent in operation because it doesn't even have a fan. Thanks to the M4 processor, it's extremely snappy and it's fast enough for everything that I do. It also, macOS that is, supports all the programs that I use, mostly open source, but there are two specific ones, DaVinci Resolve Studio and Affinity Suite, that, yeah, I paid for and that I use and that are important for my work. So these are supported by macOS, which is important. The build quality of Apple laptops is second to none. It's super rigid, it's very precisely machined. I think it's all aluminium, and it's arguably a nice design. The touchpad is also one of the best on any laptop, and the speakers are probably better than 97% of all non-Apple laptops. So you get good sound out of this. The keyboard is also nice enough. I never get tired from writing on it. There could be a little bit more travel, but I'm satisfied with it. And in sum, that means this does everything I need it to do, and it does everything pretty well. So I am satisfied and happy with this device, and like I said, I think for me personally, right now there's nothing better on the market, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't have any weaknesses or that it couldn't be improved. So let's talk about the bad stuff. Here's some things I don't like about my M4 MacBook Air. I'm not the biggest fan of the screen on the MacBook Air, and I haven't really seen any reviewer talk about all the downsides it has. It does have a pretty perfect resolution for the screen size, and it supports the P3 color gamut. It's also pretty color accurate, but there are a number of things that could be improved. So my previous laptop had an OLED screen with perfect blacks and super vibrant colors, and in comparison the MacBook Air screen is a little step back. It looks a little bit less vibrant and a little bit less contrasty. The MacBook Pros have mini LED screens and they look almost as good as OLED, but this is not an option on the Air, unfortunately. The screen of the MacBook Air is also way too reflective for my taste. The MacBook Pros have the option for a nano texture layer from this generation on, and it seems to help a lot, but in my opinion it's way overpriced and it's not even an option on the MacBook Air. Also, there are some reports that the nano texture does affect display quality negatively, so it's kind of a trade-off. Connected to how reflective the screen is, the screen brightness isn't really bright enough to offset that. It has 500 nits, which isn't bad at all, but with all the reflections, it's a little bit hard to work in bright environments. Even when I work on my desk back there, I get reflections from the window that is up there. And they're not too bad, but I wish they weren't there. The MacBook Pros, and you probably see a pattern emerge here, have a much higher display brightness, I think 1600 nits by now. But again, this display option is not available on the MacBook Air. Another uniquely annoying thing about MacBook screens, at least the ones that I've seen and used, is that they get grimy, dirty very easily, and it's also very hard to clean them. And since the displays are so reflective, when you are at the wrong angle to a light source, you can see all your fingerprints and all the stains on your display pretty well. Maybe the new nano texture layer solves this, but I haven't had the chance to try it out myself. And again, not available on the Air. There's no option for a touchscreen on any Apple laptop, probably because you would never be able to get rid of all the fingerprints. Ha ha ha. Funny. Well, joke's on me, I guess. It is true that with any normal fabric, even in combination with isopropyl, it is extremely difficult to clean the MacBook screen. But if you look at Apple support pages, they tell you to use a microfiber cloth. And once you follow these simple instructions, you can actually clean your MacBook screen with relative ease. So this is kind of a classic case of RTFM. A touchscreen, I think, is not essential to have on a laptop, but once you've used one, you don't want to miss it anymore, because in some situations it's really the fastest way to input something on your device, on your laptop. Also, there's no high refresh option on the MacBook Air. It's still stuck at 60 Hz, and I personally do not mind, I don't really care, but for a laptop in this price class in 2025, this is pretty bad. If you want a higher refresh rate, guess what? There's a Pro model, and you get that on the Pro model. It kind of seems like Apple really wants to nudge you towards the Pro models, which I find annoying. I do understand product segmentation, but it's often the case that the smallest and lightest devices aren't considered Pro for some reason, so you don't get the Pro features on the smallest model. So in this case as well, there's a trade-off. If I want a light and small laptop, 13 inches, I cannot get the Pro features, not even if I pay for the upgrades, because they don't offer them on this device. Anyways, back to the screen. I have one last point, which is the notch. It's really not a big deal. But if it wasn't there, it would be an improvement in my opinion, because I have a lot of programs running at any time, and in the top menu bar it's kind of overloaded a little bit for me. When I have the laptop connected to my screen, I can usually see all the items because the screen is bigger, but on the small laptop screen, some items are cut off, and if the notch wasn't there, I think there would be no space to display everything. So that would be an improvement, as I said. Another small annoyance of the MacBook's display is the limited tilt angle, which you can see here in comparison to my trusty old ThinkPad. This limited tilt action can lead to you not being able to look straight at the screen if you use the MacBook on your lap and have your legs bent. All in all, this still is a very good screen. It's not a deal breaker, and it's good enough for me. But in bright environments, I am a little bit bothered by all the reflections. If you often or usually work with an external monitor, this is probably not a problem for you at all. But if you don't, then you should consider that the screen is what you look at all the time, every single time you work with this machine. So all these little not so big issues, they kind of add up. And if you are planning to buy this and you've never seen a MacBook in person, I would suggest that you do so before making the purchase. Missing features. Not only is the screen missing some features like touch and a high refresh rate, but the rest of the laptop is also missing a few things that I'd like to have. One of them is a SIM card slot and the possibility for mobile internet connection. The MacBook Air would be perfect for it because it's such a good portable laptop, but it's missing its own internet connection. Obviously, most people have a smartphone and then you can just share your hotspot with your laptop, and it's not a big deal, but I've had LTE in my previous laptop and it's so nice to have and much more convenient, and I would like to see it in a MacBook. iPads, for example, have had this option for years, and other laptop brands have also implemented this for a long time. There are some rumors right now that future MacBooks will get this, so fingers crossed. I like having a print key and especially an escape key on my keyboard. And with an external keyboard, macOS supports at least the escape key, and I wish the built-in keyboard had this too. I also like privacy shutters on my webcam. It would be nice if there was more in terms of connectivity on this MacBook Air. It has two USB-C ports on the left side and the MagSafe thing, and then on the other side it has a headphone jack. This as a minimum is enough for me, but it would be nice to have one USB-C on the other side, and it would be fantastic to have USB-A and HDMI and an SD card slot as well. And guess what? Except for the USB-A, you get all of this on the MacBook Pro. And also again, you don't get the light size and the portability on the MacBook Pro, so yeah. Now my next overall point might be a little bit controversial, and it's about the case of the MacBook Air. I already said it feels extremely premium. It's so well made, but the aluminum or aluminium, it is super slippery. That's one thing. This, when you have it on your lap, you have to be very careful that it doesn't fall off. The other thing is, where I live, winter is coming and this can feel quite cold to the touch. The other thing about the case is, you've probably seen I have some stickers on here, and that is because I don't like big logos on my devices, or any logos on my devices. It makes me feel a little bit like I'm doing free advertisement for very big companies, and I don't like it. I do have to admit though that the Apple logo is probably one of the prettiest company logos. So in terms of design, this actually looks probably better without all of these stickers. I made it more ugly, but I made it more individualistic and more me. My next point is about macOS, the operating system. I do overall like it. I can work well with it. It gets out of the way. It's stable. It's polished. But there are a few things I don't like about it, and that's why I don't love macOS. It's too restrictive and not customizable enough for my liking. For example, why can I not move the Finder logo? It has to be on the dock first of all. I cannot remove it, but I can also not move it from its leftmost position. To be honest, I haven't yet installed macOS 26 Tahoe, so maybe they changed it, and then my example is pretty bad and moot. But it's still true for other parts of the operating system. Things like you cannot uninstall a lot of the applications that come with macOS, for example. Ideally, I'd like my operating system to be open source, which macOS is very much not. What macOS is also not is being as privacy focused as many people think. While macOS may be better than some of the competition, it still sends a lot of your data to Apple. Naomi Brockwell TV made a very good video about how to tame macOS's hunger for data, and I have linked it for you below. Interoperability with non-Apple devices is also pretty bad out of the box. It kind of seems like Apple really wants you to buy an iPhone to use with your MacBook. Probably, maybe. But fear not, after a little bit of research and setting up, you can make macOS work pretty well with devices from other brands. Apple gets a lot of praise for its software support, especially on phones and tablets, and that is kind of justified when you compare it to the industry standard. Fortunately, some other brands like Google and Samsung have caught up by now. And when it comes to laptops and desktops, Apple is actually not that good with software support in my opinion. For example, Apple has confirmed that macOS Tahoe, so the latest version, 26, is the last one to support Intel Macs. And the last Mac computers that came out with Intel processors only came out 5 years ago. They will completely lose any support and security updates at the end of 2028, and that's only a bit over 8 years after they came out. Now, 8 years might be a lot for some people, but I have a lot of friends who use computers that are 10 or even 15 years old, and they're still good enough for what they're doing. So 8 years is actually not that much, I think. Of course, you can install alternative operating systems, but you have to be at least a little bit tech savvy to do this. Luckily though, Apple still hasn't closed down the bootloader, even on new Apple Silicon Macs. So this should still be an option in the future when your M4 MacBook Air loses software support from Apple's side. Oh, and I think there's also a way to get newer versions of macOS to run on older Macs. But again, you have to be at least a little bit tech savvy, and you don't get the official support anymore. So if you have any issues, not great. Upgradeability. Now this is a topic that many people have talked about here on YouTube and elsewhere, but it's important enough to be reiterated. I have the 13-inch version of the MacBook Air. I'm going to hold it up again. And this has 24 gigabytes of RAM and 512 gigabytes of 512 gigabytes of storage, and it's just enough for me. The reason I don't have more is that Apple is charging astonishing prices for upgrades. For every upgrade you make, the value proposition gets a lot worse for any Mac that you get. It's really ridiculous if you compare it to actual market prices. And I think it's good if companies are being called out if they do something like that. The problem with Apple charging such high prices for upgrades is exacerbated by the fact that you cannot upgrade either the RAM or the storage. And while there may be good reasons for including the RAM into the M4 chip, I'm not an expert, there's definitely no good technical reason to make the SSD non-upgradable. The SSD on the M4 MacBook Air isn't even particularly fast. And to add insult to injury, they've been offering the same 256 GB of storage in the base model for around a decade now. And a lot has happened in the last decade in terms of computing, so you're almost forced to upgrade the storage when you get this. Otherwise you won't have a good time and you have to rely on external storage. Or I'm sure Apple would also love to sell you an iCloud subscription. So again, for me, the 24 GB of RAM and the 512 GB of storage were kind of the sweet spot in terms of price and performance. Not only because both is enough for me if I manage my workflow a little bit, but also because the price is still okay and the value is still pretty good. But don't be mistaken, many YouTubers call this a budget laptop, especially in the base config. In my opinion, that's definitely not the case. This is not budget at all. Obviously, you can pay a lot more. You can pay 4 or 5 times as much, but you can also get a functional laptop for a quarter of the price of the base config. So yeah, it's kind of somewhere in the middle. There's one last thing I wanted to say about the price, and that is if a device is too expensive, I am almost afraid to use it in the way I intend to use it. I mean, this is a portable device. I want to take it anywhere and everywhere. And if it was even more expensive, I would be really afraid to bring it with me. It's the most expensive gadget or device that I own, actually. Connected to the previous point of upgradability is repairability. Why this is important is, for example, imagine your SSD dies. That means instead of spending 50 to 100 bucks to get a new SSD, your whole laptop is now broken. And that is not great. Having said that, Apple actually has been improving in terms of repairability over the last few years. The M4 MacBook Air got a so-so score of 5 out of 10 from iFixit. The problem is the battery and the keyboard are very hard to repair. And the SSD is even harder to repair. It has to be soldered off, and I don't know and don't think it's officially possible. The good thing is the 2 USB-C ports can actually be replaced pretty easily, and the battery can also be replaced pretty easily. So those 2 things are probably the 2 most likely things to break, and they can be repaired or replaced without too much effort. Especially the battery will have to be replaced at one point, and if it is user replaceable when the time cometh, that is great. Overall, it's not great when it comes to repairability, but it's also not terrible. So, yeah. Conclusions. Now you know some of the things I don't like about the M4 MacBook Air. But in summary, none of its weaknesses are deal breakers for me. It's quite the opposite. Its strengths easily outweigh the negatives for me. That's why it is my main device, and it will remain so for the foreseeable future. It does everything I need it to do, and it does all of it well. And at the end of the day, it is a tool, and if it's the right tool for the job, then I don't know, if the hammer can hammer the nail into the wall, then you don't need a new hammer. It's good hammer.